Failure is external. It happens to you. Lust is internal. It consumes you from within. Failure tests your resilience. Lust destroys your capacity for resilience. Failure is temporary. Lust, left unchecked, becomes a permanent master that disguises itself as pleasure. Today, we live in a culture saturated with sexual imagery, where pornography is more accessible than clean water, where endless stimulation is just a click away, where lust is celebrated as healthy sexuality and abstinence is mocked as repression. In this environment, most men have become slaves without recognizing their chains. The Stoics understood something we've forgotten. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want. True freedom is wanting only what you should want. The man enslaved by lust believes he's free because he can satisfy his desires. The man who has mastered lust knows he's free because those desires don't control him. As Epictetus, who knew literal slavery, taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. When lust masters you, you are not free, no matter how much you can indulge it. Today we're exploring why lust weakens men more than failure, how it operates invisibly to drain your power, and what the Stoics taught about reclaiming sovereignty over your desires. This isn't about repression or shame. It's about understanding the mechanics of internal power and recognizing the difference between satisfaction and slavery. The first weakness: lust fragments your focus and energy. The scattered mind. When a man experiences failure, a business collapse, a relationship ending, a goal missed, his focus becomes laser sharp. All of his energy concentrates on recovery, on understanding what went wrong, on rebuilding. Failure, paradoxically, creates focus through constraint. You have a clear problem and limited resources, which forces prioritization and concentrated effort. Lust does the opposite. It scatters your focus across countless stimuli, fragments your attention into 1,000 pieces, and drains your energy through constant distraction. Consider the man caught in lust's grip. His mind wanders constantly to sexual imagery. He checks dating apps compulsively. He scrolls through content designed to arouse. He fantasizes instead of planning. He pursues temporary gratification instead of long-term goals. His attention, the most valuable resource he possesses, is continuously pulled away from what matters toward what merely stimulates. Marcus Aurelius understood attention as the foundation of all achievement. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But the man enslaved by lust has surrendered power over his mind to whatever triggers arousal. His thoughts aren't his own. They're reactions to stimuli designed to capture attention. The mathematics are brutal. If you spend 2 hours daily on lust-driven activities, pornography, excessive dating app usage, compulsive fantasy, that's 730 hours per year, the equivalent of 18 full work weeks, invested in activities that produce nothing but temporary neurochemical release. Meanwhile, the man who has mastered these impulses invests those same 730 hours in building skills, relationships, businesses, health, and character. Over 5 years, that's a 3,650-hour difference. One man has built an empire of capability. The other has built nothing but a deeper groove in his neural pathways toward immediate gratification. The energy drain. But it's not just time, it's energy. Sexual desire, when constantly activated and satisfied, creates a cycle of arousal and depletion that drains vitality. The Stoics observed that every desire satisfied creates a stronger desire. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." This is especially true of lust. Each time you satisfy the craving, you don't eliminate it, you strengthen the neural pathway. The appetite grows with feeding. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. Each cycle of arousal and gratification releases dopamine, training your brain to seek that hit again. Over time, you need more intensity, more novelty, more stimulation to achieve the same effect. This is the hedonic treadmill applied to sexuality, running faster and faster to stay in the same place, except you're actually falling behind. The man in this cycle wakes up depleted, not energized. His motivation for difficult tasks is weak because his brain has been trained to expect easy dopamine hits. His capacity for delayed gratification atrophies. His discipline erodes. He becomes progressively less capable of the sustained effort that achievement requires. Contrast this with the man who has learned to channel sexual energy rather than dissipate it. Ancient traditions from Taoism to certain yogic practices understood that sexual energy, when conserved and redirected, becomes available for other pursuits. The Stoics weren't as explicit about this mechanism, but they practiced it through temperance, one of the 4 cardinal virtues. The transformation. When a man reclaims his focus and energy from lust, concentration deepens. Without constant mental interruption from sexual stimuli, he can sustain attention for hours on demanding tasks. This is where breakthroughs happen, in sustained, deep focus that shallow attention can never access. Energy becomes available. The vitality that was being dissipated through constant arousal and gratification becomes available for building, creating, and achieving. He wakes with drive rather than depletion. Time multiplies. Hours previously spent on lust-driven activities become available for skill development, relationship building, and goal pursuit. The compound effect over years is transformative. Discipline strengthens. Each time he feels the impulse and chooses not to act on it, he's doing a mental rep. Like physical training, this builds capacity. His ability to delay gratification, the single best predictor of success, strengthens dramatically. Failure might temporarily drain your resources. Lust chronically drains them, day after day, leaving you perpetually weakened and wondering why you can't achieve what you're capable of. The second weakness. Lust destroys self-respect and personal power. The shame spiral. Failure damages your results, but can actually strengthen your self-respect if you respond with integrity. The man who tries boldly, fails honorably, and learns from the experience often gains self-respect. He sees himself as someone willing to risk, able to endure setback, capable of growth. Failure, met with virtue, builds character. Lust does the opposite. It creates a shame spiral that progressively destroys self-respect and, with it, personal power. Here's the mechanism. You give in to the impulse. You experience momentary pleasure followed immediately by emptiness or regret. You promise yourself, that was the last time. Hours or days later, you give in again. Each cycle reinforces a devastating internal narrative. I can't control myself. My word to myself means nothing. I'm weak. Epictetus taught, if you wish to be good, first believe that you are bad. But there's a difference between acknowledging flaws for growth versus internalizing an identity of powerlessness. The man caught in lust's cycle isn't acknowledging a flaw to address. He's repeatedly proving to himself that he's enslaved, that he cannot keep commitments to himself, that his will is subject to his appetites. This destruction of self-respect has cascading consequences. The man who doesn't respect himself doesn't act like someone worthy of respect. He tolerates mistreatment. He accepts less than he deserves. He doesn't advocate for himself. He makes choices from scarcity rather than abundance because he doesn't believe he's worth better. Moreover, he knows, at some level, that he's living a divided life. There's the person he presents to the world, and there's the person alone with his compulsions. This incongruence creates constant low-level anxiety. He's always slightly performing, always afraid of being exposed, always maintaining a gap between who he claims to be and who he actually is. The addiction to external validation. Lust trains men to seek validation externally rather than internally. The man pursuing sexual conquests is often not actually pursuing connection. He's pursuing proof of his desirability, collecting validations of his worth through others' willingness to sleep with him. This creates a profound weakness. His sense of self becomes dependent on others' responses. When he's receiving sexual attention, he feels powerful. When he's not, he feels worthless. He's handed control of his internal state to external circumstances and other people's choices. The Stoics warned against exactly this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." The man enslaved by lust has judged that his worth depends on sexual validation. This judgment makes him perpetually vulnerable. Contrast this with failure. A man who fails at a business venture might feel disappointed, but if he's maintained integrity throughout, he can look himself in the eye and respect the person he sees. He tried, he gave his best, he failed honorably. His self-respect remains intact, which means his power to try again remains intact. The man enslaved by lust can't look himself in the eye with respect. He sees someone who can't keep promises to himself, who is controlled by impulses he claims to want to control, who lives a divided life. This lack of self-respect becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of powerlessness. The transformation. When a man reclaims self-respect by mastering lust, internal validation develops. His sense of worth comes from keeping commitments to himself, from integrity between his values and actions, from demonstrated self-mastery. This is unshakable because it's not dependent on others. Confidence becomes authentic, not the false confidence of someone performing, but the real confidence of someone who trusts himself because he's proven himself trustworthy to himself. Decision-making improves. The man who respects himself makes decisions from abundance. He doesn't accept disrespect. He doesn't tolerate poor treatment. He sets and enforces boundaries because he believes he deserves them. Presence strengthens. People sense when someone respects themselves versus when they don't. The man with genuine self-respect carries himself differently, speaks differently, commands space differently. This presence is power. The divided life ends. When your private behavior aligns with your public persona, the anxiety of incongruence disappears. You can be fully yourself because there's no secret life to hide. Failure might temporarily dent your confidence. Lust destroys the foundation of self-respect on which all genuine confidence is built. The third weakness, lust, impairs long-term thinking and strategic planning. The tyranny of the present. Failure, especially repeated failure, often forces men to develop better long-term thinking. You learn to anticipate obstacles, plan more carefully, think 3 steps ahead. Failure is a teacher of strategic thinking, if you're willing to learn. Lust is the enemy of long-term thinking. It imprisons you in the present moment, in immediate gratification, in the tyranny of, "I want this now." Seneca observed, "He who is brave is free." But he also understood that bravery requires the ability to sacrifice present pleasure for future good. The man enslaved by lust has lost this capacity. His brain has been trained to prioritize immediate reward over delayed benefit, which destroys his ability to plan and execute long-term strategies. Consider the practical implications. Career building requires delayed gratification. You invest years in skill development before seeing major returns. The man who can't delay sexual gratification also struggles to delay professional gratification. He wants results now, gets frustrated when they don't come immediately, and quits before compounding has time to work. Relationship quality requires patience. Deep connection develops slowly through consistent presence and vulnerability over time. The man trained in instant sexual gratification expects instant intimacy, gets bored when relationships require work, and jumps to the next source of novelty rather than building something meaningful. Financial success requires saving and investing. You defer consumption today to have more tomorrow. The man whose brain is wired for immediate reward cannot execute this strategy effectively. He spends rather than invests, pursues quick money schemes rather than building slowly, and remains perpetually broke despite working hard. Health requires daily discipline for future benefits. You work out today for strength months from now. You eat well today for health years from now. The instant gratification mind rebels against this. Why suffer today for benefits you can't see yet? The mathematics of compounding work only for those who can delay gratification long enough for compounding to occur. And compounding is everything, in skills, relationships, finances, health. The man imprisoned by lust is excluded from the exponential benefits of compounding because he cannot stay consistent long enough. The decision-making deficit. Lust also impairs judgment in the moment of arousal. Brain scans show that when sexually aroused, men make worse decisions across all domains, not just sexual ones. Risk assessment deteriorates. Impulse control weakens. Long-term consequences become invisible. This is why critical decisions, business deals, major purchases, relationship commitments should never be made while aroused. Yet the man who keeps himself in a state of constant semi-arousal through regular exposure to sexual stimuli is making all his decisions from this impaired state. Marcus Aurelius practiced decision-making from clarity. He would examine his impulses. Is this necessary? Does this serve virtue? Will I regret this? These questions only work when you have the mental space to ask them. The aroused mind doesn't ask questions. It justifies actions already decided by impulse. The transformation. When a man reclaims long-term thinking from the grip of lust, future orientation develops. He can delay gratification because his brain isn't constantly seeking the next hit. This enables all forms of investment in skills, relationships, health, and wealth. Strategic thinking sharpens. Without the constant pull toward immediate reward, he can plan multiple steps ahead. He can see the path from here to there and execute patiently. Discipline compounds. Each day of choosing long-term benefit over short-term pleasure strengthens the neural pathways of discipline. This capacity transfers to all areas. If you can master sexual impulse, you can master most other impulses. Decisions improve. Made from clarity rather than arousal, his choices serve his long-term interests rather than his immediate impulses. Over time, better decisions compound into a better life. He can play the long game. Success in almost everything requires playing long games well. Relationships, careers, health, wealth, all improve through consistent effort over years. The man freed from lust's tyranny can finally play these long games effectively. Failure might force you to adjust your strategy. Lust prevents you from having a strategy in the first place by trapping you in an endless present of immediate gratification. The fourth weakness, lust commodifies human connection. The destruction of genuine intimacy. Failure in relationships, while painful, often teaches men about authentic connection. You learn what works and what doesn't. You develop empathy. You understand the complexity of another person. Failure in love can deepen your capacity for love if you let it. Lust destroys this capacity entirely by training you to see people as objects for gratification rather than as subjects worthy of genuine connection. The man deep in lust, whether through pornography, casual encounters, or constant pursuit of new partners, trains his brain to associate human bodies with reward. Not the whole person, not their story or soul or complexity, just their body as a means to his gratification. Over time, this becomes his default mode. He cannot see people without immediately assessing them as potential sources of pleasure. Epictetus taught, "What disturbs people's minds is not events, but their judgments on events." The judgment that people exist primarily as potential sources of sexual gratification is one of the most disturbing a man can make. It poisons every interaction, every relationship, every chance at genuine intimacy. The practical consequences are devastating. He cannot be present with a partner. His mind is constantly comparing this real person to the infinite variety available through screens. Real people, with their complex emotions and imperfections, cannot compete with the supernormal stimuli he's trained himself to crave. Vulnerability becomes impossible. Genuine intimacy requires vulnerability, showing your authentic self, including flaws and fears. But the man operating from lust isn't seeking intimacy, he's seeking gratification. Vulnerability would only slow that down. Relationships become transactional. He gives attention, affection, time, not out of genuine care, but as investments toward the payoff of sexual access. When the transaction stops paying off, he leaves. The relationship was never real. Empathy atrophies. To see someone as an object for your gratification, you must actively suppress awareness of their full humanity. This suppression, repeated thousands of times, destroys your capacity for empathy. You become literally unable to fully recognize others as subjects like yourself. Loneliness deepens paradoxically. Despite potentially having more sexual encounters than ever, he's profoundly alone. He's never truly connecting. He's never truly seen or seeing. He's trapped in an ironic hell, surrounded by bodies but unable to touch souls. The contrast with failure. Compare this to the man who has failed in relationships but maintained his integrity. He's hurt, he's learning, but his capacity for genuine connection remains intact, or even expands. He sees failed relationships as interactions between two complex humans navigating difficulty, not as transactions that didn't pay off. This man can love again, deeper than before, because failure has taught him what love requires. The man enslaved by lust cannot love at all. He can only desire, pursue, gratify, and then search for the next target. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But he could have added, "We suffer most when we imagine people as objects rather than recognizing them as subjects." The objectification at the heart of lust creates suffering for both the objectifier and the objectified. The transformation. When a man reclaims the capacity for genuine connection, presence becomes possible. He can be fully with someone, seeing them, hearing them, feeling them, without his mind wandering to other options or reducing them to body parts. Vulnerability develops. He can show his authentic self because he's not performing for sexual access. He's seeking genuine connection, which requires authenticity. Depth replaces breadth. Instead of shallow connections with many, he develops deep connections with few. These deep connections, impossible when operating from lust, provide actual fulfillment that fleeting encounters never could. Empathy returns. He sees people as complex subjects again, with their own stories, struggles, dreams, and depth. This recognition enables authentic intimacy. Loneliness heals. True connection cures loneliness in ways that 1,000 shallow encounters cannot. He experiences being truly seen and truly seeing another, which is what humans actually need. Failure in relationships might hurt, but it leaves your capacity for love intact. Lust destroys that capacity entirely by training you to see humans as objects rather than subjects worthy of genuine connection. The fifth weakness. Lust keeps you enslaved to fear. The paradox of power. Here's the deepest weakness lust creates. The man enslaved by sexual desire is enslaved by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of not being desired, fear of missing out, fear of being alone. These fears give others enormous power over him. When failure occurs, you face fear directly. A business fails, you face your fear of financial ruin. A relationship ends, you face your fear of being alone. Direct confrontation with fear, handled with Stoic virtue, diminishes the fear's power. You discover you can survive what you feared. The fear loses its hold. Lust operates differently. It doesn't help you face fears. It temporarily numbs them while making them stronger. Each time you pursue sexual gratification to avoid feeling inadequate, lonely, or rejected, you're reinforcing the belief that you need that gratification to handle those feelings. The fears grow stronger through avoidance while you grow weaker. Marcus Aurelius understood this mechanism. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." But the man enslaved by lust has estimated that his worth depends on sexual validation, that his happiness depends on sexual gratification, that his life is unbearable without these things. These estimates make him profoundly vulnerable. Consider how this manifests. Fear of rejection controls his behavior. He doesn't pursue opportunities that risk rejection. He settles for less than he wants. He remains in unsatisfying situations rather than risk being alone. His life is shaped by avoidance of rejection rather than pursuit of authentic desire. Fear of inadequacy drives constant comparison. He's measuring himself against others, sexually, romantically, physically. This comparison creates perpetual anxiety because there's always someone more attractive, more successful, more desired. He can never rest in sufficiency. Fear of missing out prevents commitment. He can't fully commit to a partner because what if someone better appears? He can't develop depth because he's always keeping options open. FOMO keeps him perpetually dissatisfied with what he has. Fear of being alone makes him desperate. This desperation is visible and unattractive, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. His fear of being alone makes him act in ways that ensure he'll either be alone or in poor relationships he's afraid to leave. Fear of his own desire controls him. He's afraid of the intensity of his sexual desire, which makes him either suppress it destructively or indulge it compulsively. Either extreme is enslavement. The freedom failure provides. Contrast this with the man who has failed and faced fears directly. He's been rejected and survived. He's been alone and discovered he's okay. He's faced inadequacy and learned he can grow. He's lost what he feared losing and found he's still himself. This man is dangerous in the best sense. He cannot be controlled through fear because he's already faced what he feared. The leverage that fear might provide has evaporated. He's free to pursue what he authentically wants rather than what he fears not having. The transformation. When a man masters lust and faces his fears directly, rejection becomes acceptable. He can pursue what he actually wants because rejection no longer threatens his core. He's not seeking validation, he's seeking connection. This makes him more attractive and less needy. Comparison ends. He's not measuring himself against others because his worth isn't determined by external metrics. He's sufficient. This piece is both attractive and liberating. Commitment becomes possible. Without FOMO driving him, he can fully invest in what he has. This depth creates relationships far more fulfilling than the breadth of shallow connections ever could. Aloneness becomes tolerable, even valuable. He discovers that being alone isn't the catastrophe he imagined. In fact, solitude offers space for growth. This removes others' power to manipulate him through his fear of being alone. Desire becomes his servant rather than his master. He experiences sexual desire, but isn't controlled by it. The desire arises, he acknowledges it, and he chooses how to respond. This is the definition of freedom. Epictetus taught, "He is free who lives as he wishes to live, who is neither subject to compulsion nor to hindrance, nor to force, whose movements to action are not impeded, whose desires attain their purpose, and who does not fall into that which he would avoid." The man enslaved by lust fails every criterion. The man who has mastered lust meets them all. Conclusion: the path to sovereignty. We've explored why lust weakens men more than failure. It fragments focus and drains energy that could build empires. It destroys self-respect and personal power through repeated self-betrayal. It impairs long-term thinking and strategic planning by imprisoning you in immediate gratification. It commodifies human connection and destroys capacity for genuine intimacy. It keeps you enslaved to fears that control your entire life. The Stoics weren't ascetics who denied all pleasure. They were pragmatists who understood that some pleasures serve you while others enslave you. Sexual desire, properly channeled, can fuel creativity, drive achievement, and deepen intimacy. Sexual desire unchanneled and compulsive destroys everything it touches while convincing you it's giving you freedom. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca all understood. True strength isn't the absence of desire, it's desire under conscious control. It's the ability to feel the impulse and choose your response. It's the sovereignty of deciding which desires you'll feed and which you'll starve. The path forward isn't repression, which creates its own problems. It's transmutation, taking the raw energy of sexual desire and channeling it toward purposes that build rather than diminish you. This requires awareness of when lust is controlling you versus when you're making conscious choices about sexuality, boundaries around stimuli that trigger compulsive responses, removing access to pornography, limiting time on dating apps, avoiding situations that activate your weakest impulses. Redirection of sexual energy toward creative pursuits, physical training, relationship building, and achievement that requires sustained focus. Patience with the process of rewiring neural pathways that have been carved deep through years of conditioning. Purpose that provides meaning beyond gratification, something worth channeling energy toward that's larger than your immediate desires. The Stoics promise that virtue is its own reward. When you master lust, you discover they were right. The freedom of sovereignty over your desires is more satisfying than any pleasure those desires promised. The capacity for genuine intimacy is more fulfilling than 1,000 shallow encounters. The ability to pursue long-term goals without distraction creates achievement that temporary gratification never could. Failure might knock you down. It might take your business, your relationship, your plans. But if you respond with virtue, you stand back up stronger. Lust doesn't knock you down dramatically. It weakens you, slowly, imperceptibly, day after day, until you're a shadow of what you could be, and you don't even realize what you've lost because the process was so gradual. The choice is yours. You can continue believing that satisfying every desire equals freedom, or you can discover what the Stoics knew, that mastering desire is freedom, and that this mastery makes you more powerful than any external success ever could. As Epictetus taught his students, no man is free who is not master of himself. Master yourself. Master your desires. Discover the strength that comes not from having everything you want, but from wanting only what you should want. That strength is available to you. That freedom is waiting. That sovereignty is yours to claim. But only if you're willing to see lust for what it truly is, not a source of power, but a thief of it. Not freedom, but slavery. Not strength, but the most insidious weakness a man can suffer. Choose mastery, choose sovereignty, choose strength. The Stoic path awaits.